How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. He's a strength and powerlifting coach. He's also a pre-script level 3 coach, which is pretty awesome. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Kyle McKee. How are you doing?
Doing great. It's a great evening right now.
Lovely. Well, thanks a lot for taking the time to jump on. Yeah, I suppose the first question is, how are you? What's been kind of happening in your world recently?
Yeah, things are good. Right now I'm in Tampa, Florida. I'm doing an internship, a performance coaching internship with Yo Murphy Performance. And so there's an NFL pre-draft prep camp happening right now. And it kind of goes sort of like the level three, the preschool level three experience kind of goes along with this. And so I had done that 2 years ago. And then had a break in my schedule, which was sort of planned, sort of unplanned. And I ended up messaging Killian Hamilton and just asking, like, "Hey, is there an opportunity to come back and be there for the entire camp this time instead of just 1 week?" And so yeah, we've been in the mix now. It's the halfway through week 6, so there's 2.5 weeks left of my trip at least. And so it's been a pretty cool experience to get to see the like full like facility experience of not just what is are these athletes doing, but how does a facility like YMP run kind of from top to bottom, from open to close. So it's been pretty fun. It's been cool. It's been long days, long weeks, but very, very cool experience.
Yeah, definitely. And you might get used to this throughout the chat, but sometimes tangents do occur when we start chatting. And I know doing internships and you learn a lot. Yes, it's long days, it's hard work. I know for me, with some of the sports teams that I worked with back in the UK, but I do feel as though um you learn a lot more from that because especially for maybe some of the younger coaches listening, everyone always speaks about more experience, whereas actually, trying to take those opportunities like what you've done when they come along, the kind of priceless when it comes to gaining that experience and as well building a network and connection with other coaches and athletes to have that exposure to that environment. Would you kind of agree with that? What's kind of been your take on it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that's been cool about this experience is it's so immersive. So a lot of times when you're doing like a shadowing experience, something like that, you might be in a facility for a couple of days, or you might spend a weekend somewhere or a week. And so with this experience, it's been really cool to be like it's a true internship experience. Like when I did internships in college, I was in school full time, I was working, I was playing sports, and also doing internships on top of all that. And so one of the internships I did was at a youth performance facility. And so I would go in after school, like after classes and after work and everything, and work 3 or 4 hours in the evening. And so you get a lot of hands-on experience for something like that. But being in this experience where it's like, this is my full-time job effectively for 8 weeks. And so it's cool because just the amount of new perspectives I've gotten on not just how do you run group training sessions or how do you transition from coaching an 11-year-old to 23-year-olds who are going to go play professional football to
Yeah.
coaching a single 7-year-old, like being able to make those transitions, but also just getting to see like the overall flow of how a day works, how sessions work, different pieces of equipment that aren't in most gyms. Like this is one of the few gyms that this is the only gym I've actually ever been in that has Kaiser equipment, which is like
Oh,
basically like piston or hydraulics,
mhm.
air pressure equipment. And so it's just fun to get to experience all of those things and to be here long enough where it's like now I'm in a rhythm where it's like I'm staying in a hotel room effectively. And it's like I have like a schedule of like I go grocery shopping here. I have a car that I drive every day. And it's like my weekends I spend a certain way. And so just been fun in that perspective to get what I think is like just an even higher level of hands-on experience
Yeah.
than I think you get if you're here, like if you're in an experience for a shorter period of time. So yeah, I think it's valuable and like nobody likes working for free. Like I know that that's less and less popular as time goes on. Things get more expensive and student loans. People are like, I'm already working a full-time job to pay off all my debt. Like, how am I supposed to then also work for free somewhere else? And I think that's the thing is like I'm 35 or I'm 34. I'm gonna turn 35 this year. Jumping the gun, I guess. But it's like taking these like breaks in my career to do things, have experiences like this to gain new new knowledge to test what I know in a real life setting. I think like if you can create an environment where you can swing that, I don't think there's anything better.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know I can appreciate again for maybe younger coaches or any coaches listening, it's kind of can maybe push them out of their comfort zone to do something like that. Whereas yeah, everything that you've listed there in terms of the experience and what you're gonna gain from it, I think yeah, you kind of have to take those opportunities because something like that may not come up again. So I think that's important. Um,
Mhm.
I know I did quite a brief introduction at the start, but you've mentioned there about you know, you were working, studying, also doing internships beforehand. But for everyone listening who might not know your background in education, coaching, training, just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself, Kyle.
Yeah, totally. So I started this whole thing when I was a sophomore in high school. I got a chance to take an anatomy and physiology class as a you know like a 15-year-old, which was pretty fun that my high school even offered that. And so that was kind of where I got really fascinated with like how the human body works. I've been playing sports my whole life. I played baseball a lot growing up. I played tennis in high school and college. And so I've always been really interested in my own training. And so then learning how to apply that from you know, like a larger, more like scientific context was always really interesting to me. And so I went to my undergrad. I got my undergrad. It's a well, so the year I graduated, they changed to a kinesiology degree. So technically, I have a degree, a Bachelor of Science in Physical Education, with concentrations in exercise science and pre-athletic training. So that was actually initially what I wanted to do was go into athletic training. So the injury management and rehab, assessment management and rehab. And one of the things that I realized relatively quickly is a lot of the issues we were having with athletes could just be solved in the weight room. So I went to a Division III school, and so at that level in the U.S., there are no athletic scholarships. It's all academic. And so if you're coming to play a sport at a Division III school, you just straight up probably weren't good enough to play D2 or D1 to get a scholarship. And so this is one of your last chances to really be to play competitive at a high level. And so at this specific place, it's like people were primarily there to be students and they also played sports. And it was more of a liberal arts school. So athletics were not particularly, you know, a high priority for the school from like a budgeting standpoint. And so we had a weight room, had a strength coach. Every team, every athlete had a program, but there wasn't necessarily good systems to create like follow up and adherence to those programs. And so you would come in August, and that's when all the fall sports would show up, and they'd show up on one day, and you take all the measurements, you know, height, weight, take blood pressures for all the contact sports. You'd run the concussion protocol, and then everybody would be jacked up and fired up. And I live in Western Washington. Normally, that's where I went to school. That's where I grew up. I spent most of my life there, and so it's kind of the end of the summer. August is like nice and hot and sunny, and everybody's back with their friends and you know they're all excited to be back at school. And then this was traditionally a football problem, unsurprisingly, is they would go out on the first day after spending all summer on the lake, you know, wakeboarding and not training. And then you'd come in on day two, and there'd be 3 or 4 hamstring strains. You'd come in on day three, and there were 4 or 5 more. And then that was kind of the end of their season, or you know, what is a relatively short season for a school like that. Someone's out with a hammy strain for 3, 4, 5 weeks, that's a big portion of their college career. And you can kind of get medical red shirts at that level, but they don't really hand them out quite the same way, especially if you're not getting paid to play. Like if you're going to come back and play a fifth year as a senior, like you're shelling out for another year of tuition,
Yeah.
which is not generally that cheap. And so one of the things that I saw was like, gosh, all my friends, like all these guys are just missing games just constantly. And so as a senior, I kind of realized like, hey, if the strength and conditioning side was a little more dialed in, we might be just experiencing less of these problems, especially kind of going through an off season into the main season or the regular season, just like workloads and, you know, how the programs are structured. And how the athletes adhere to those programs, you could just solve a lot of problems that way. The other thing that I experienced that same summer between my junior year and senior year, I did another internship with the Tacoma Rainiers, which is the Seattle Mariners minor league affiliate. And so I spent all summer in a semi-professional athletic training room, and I got to experience all the hours you worked and the quality of the facility, which is not necessarily what you'd imagine for like pro teams. And I was like, I don't know that this is the job that I want because I basically spent all, and I didn't travel with the team because I didn't have a certification, so they couldn't like pay for me to like travel. So I was only working the home games. And even at that point, I was completely exhausted by the schedule. And I was like, I don't know if this is actually the job that I want. I don't know if this is the schedule I want. I'm just not sure at, 20 years old if this is what I wanted to sign up for the rest of my life. And so that was the other reason I kind of pivoted into strength coaching. So I finished out my degree, started to go down the strength conditioning route. Didn't really know what I wanted to do from there. Because at that point, the jobs you could kind of get in my area were working at the same facility that I'd interned at, doing speed and agility coaching for youth athletes, which was a great job. It was a great gym. Paid you basically minimum wage, which with a 4-year degree, I was not really that excited about. Or you could be a personal trainer at a big box gym. And at that point, and this was in like 2013. And so at that point, in-person personal training felt a lot like standing upside down on Bosu balls, like doing single arm dumbbell curls. And I was like, I know that that's not what I want to do for a job either. Because that's also just kind of, it felt like a sales job at that point. I was like, I don't know that I really want that either. And so then ironically, my first job, my first job out of college was selling gym memberships at LA Fitness. And that lasted for like a month because that was a horrendous environment. Then I ended up working at like this like little locally owned grocery store with one of my cousins. And that was actually a really fun job. And then I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. So then I ended up going into tech for a little while. I worked at a pretty small startup. I worked at a larger tech company. And then I was living in the Bay Area at the time. And I ended up, one of my coworkers trained at Boss Barbell Club, which, was one of the premier powerlifting gyms in the country. And so I just accidentally fell into that. And I'd never done powerlifting before. I'd, trained on a barbell like quite a bit, but I'd never even considered that powerlifting was, I don't even think I knew what powerlifting was, like to be fully transparent. And and I just kind of like fell into that. And that's actually how I got and I found the prescript as well. Because Jordan Shallow used to have his chiropractic office out of that same gym. And so I basically spent the first like year and a half there just trying to stay out of the background of all of his videos. Um, and then ended up having like a hip injury. Went to Jordan Junta, who's the other prescript co-founder. Got my hip assessed by him, got some work done. And then my wife and I ended up moving back to Washington State. At about the same time, they launched the level one prescript level one certification online. And I was like, this is a like a framework that I can get behind. Like this is a really interesting way to think about training and how to solve problems in the gym. And so that led me back into one-on-one in-person training. That was in 2019. I got a job at 24 Hour Fitness. Then March of 2020 happened and everybody got laid off. And then spent a few months at home and then ended up getting hired at another local gym in Seattle as an independent contractor, personal trainer, and did that for the last 5.5 years, 4.5 years. And then now we're here in Tampa. So background, I guess that was not really a short description at all, but background is in athletic performance. A lot of my training was sports performance and then has been powerlifting. And now we're kind of making a shift back into more of the sports performance side of things with a sort of barbell focused barbell background.
Yeah. I always like to ask like the background of things because I know and I've been there as kind of like a younger coach, looking up to other coaches thinking about, wow, they've done this, this, and this. Whereas actually, like what you've said there, it was kind of like, well, I did this, didn't really feel as though that was the right thing. Did this for a little bit and it kind of like stumbled across it. And I often think sometimes you end up stumbling into things that match what you want to get out of it. And obviously it gets to a point where you are right now. I know for me, in because I played a lot of rugby, I was like, I want to be a rugby strength and conditioning coach. That's it. That's the
Hmm.
ideal job. And interesting that you said about facility wise. One of the rugby teams that I used to I did an intern and then worked there. It was funny. I had to get two buses over because I didn't
Oh
drive.
no.
So I was like, yeah, I want to get there and it's going to be really good. It's going to be like a top class facility. And you got there and it was a little bit like, oh, okay. But at the time, they swapped head coaches halfway through the season. I say swapped. They got rid of one coach, got another one in.
Uh-huh.
The first head coach was kind of like didn't really yeah, I'd probably say yeah, he didn't really believe in like S&C. He was like, right, you've got I'm sure one day he said you've got half an hour and then I want them out on the field. And it's a little bit like, okay, so what we're gonna do in that half an hour. Whereas the other coach who came in was like a big believer in it. And actually the second half of the season you could see the difference. There were less injuries, they were a little bit more powerful in contacts. But because of the swap and change of it, I was kind of like you. The environment wasn't. I didn't feel as though I could get the most. I could get the most out of that. Then all of a sudden, you go across and you bump into people who match more of what you want, and then go from there. And I think it's good to have that experience. I've never really spoken to any other coach that has got it sussed out straight away and be like, "Yep, bang, I'm gonna do this." And the other thing that stood out to me when you were chatting there was about obviously speaking about the college athletes being like, well, could this be done better? Why was the hamstring injuries? Why? How can we get the most out of this? And this is something that I know you've shared and spoken about a lot. And this has actually been a conversation that I've had with clients over the last couple of weeks as well. And it's kind of that thing of when it comes to getting the most out of their program, or if they don't feel as though they're progressing, is it a case of they just need to try harder and kind of what that definition is to you? Or sometimes, both clients and coaches can go down the route of, oh, don't worry, let's change this. Then after a couple of weeks, oh, well, let's just change this then if you're not progressing with this. And then all of a sudden, in a 8 week program, they've changed the exercises 3 or 4 times, and then they're still wondering why they're not getting the progress out of it. So, what's kind of the best approach that you take? What's kind of your thoughts on that, and your definition of what is actually trying harder, if all that makes sense? I know I threw a lot of
Yeah.
information now.
No, that's perfect. When you sent that over, I was like, this is like the perfect topic because this is something that gets talked about a lot. And I talk about this a lot, especially when I was doing one-on-one personal training. This conversation came up all the time and comes up a lot in online coaching as well. But this was the phrase that I know people have said this for a long time. My first exposure to this phrase, like, have you tried trying, was at Boss Barbell. So at the time, there were like, gosh, probably 8 like all-time world record holders that would train at the gym. We would all just be there at the same time. And the way that it worked is that Dan Green would write a program on the board, and it was a 12-week block. And basically, everybody came in and just did the program on the board, and it was usually percent. And it was basically always percentage based. And so you would come in, and there was like an assigned weight that's like you're doing a 4x4 deficit pause deadlift at 62.5% this week, and it's going to be 65% next week and 67.5% next week. So you better just lock in and figure it out. And so one of my friends, Christy Hawkins, would would drop that sometimes because she tries like crazy all the time. Like she's still hitting massive, massive numbers to this day. And you'd come in and like this was when I was working at the startup. And so my buddy and I would come from work. We'd have been there for 12 hours, like on the phones, on our computer, in and out of meetings, just constantly, completely wiped. And you'd come in and be like, I don't really feel like training. I don't really feel like doing this. The weight moves, it's not moving that well. I don't really know. And it'd be like, hey, just like not ironically, not a rhetorical question. Like, did you try trying today? Like, did you actually come in and lift this barbell with the intent to rip it off the ground? And most time the answer was like, yeah, not really. Like I kind of came in and just kind of am going through the motions. And so the first way that I like to frame this with clients is what are you going to do more of? So a lot of times I think that people who are stuck in the like the novice to intermediate range go, something's not working. I need to do more. And their version of more is more exercises or more sets or more reps, basically just more volume. Like I'll just attack this with more overall workload. And a lot of times I think that's the opposite approach because what's happening is you probably have too much work and you're not actually executing that work very well. So I one of the things that I think I look for, especially when I'm viewing videos from clients now, is what is the speed of the bar as it's moving from in a powerlifting context specifically. And so if someone's sort of struggling with this, I'm like, hey, I want you to record your warm up sets and I want you to send those to me as well. Because if you are working at, you know, 55% of your working weight for that day, if you're warming up with 55%, 50%, that bar, if you're doing a deadlift, you should be able to send that into orbit. Like you should be pulling that up so fast that you almost leave the ground. Like that's how much intent you should have. So if you deadlift like I deadlift 585 right now. If I'm warming up with 315 and that bar is moving slow, that's probably going to be a bad workout because I'm not actually trying to move the weight. And one of the things, the examples I kind of give for this is like if you're standing up from a sitting position, like I'm sitting in a chair right now, if I was to stand up, the way that you do that and do it like a normal human being would be to do the minimum amount, put the minimum amount of force into the floor to get you to a standing position. If I don't use enough force, I'm going to stay seated or I'm going to fall over. If I use too much force, I'm going to end up jumping. So you end up doing just the minimum amount. And I think what ends up happening a lot of times in training is people go, okay, I have to move the bar or the dumbbells or the machine X distance. And there is Y amount of weight, and I'm going to do Z number of reps. And so I'm going to do the minimum amount of work possible to accomplish that task. Because a lot of times programs are kind of written that way, where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to do 3 sets of 8 at RPE 8. And it's like, okay, cool. If you're doing a dumbbell press, incline dumbbell press, 3 sets of 8, RPE 8, they'll pick a weight that they think is going to be RPE 8, and that's what they choose to do. And so then it starts to move like it's RPE 8. And it's like, okay, well, if you had tried harder, if you tried to move that weight faster, it would probably look like an RPE 4 or 5. And so one of the things they'll give to newer clients who are kind of struggling with this, because as coaches, we know what it's supposed to look like, right? Like the first couple of reps are supposed to be fast, the last couple of reps are supposed to be slow. Especially new clients who are new to the gym, which was most of my in-person training population, have no idea what hard feels like in the gym. They know what hard feels like in their job,
Yeah.
in their life, but they don't know what that like physical capacity is for hard. And like we've coached sports, we've played sports, we know what a hard workout actually feels like. And so what I would do with them is I would go, okay, I don't want you to count any of these reps. I want you to go until you literally cannot do one more rep. And so you push, 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 shaking, 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 failure. And so they do a set, for 12, like, oh, felt hard. Do another set of 12. Oh, that one felt hard too. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to count. I'm going to say out loud, I'm going to say one every time. Every rep is just one, 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 one. And they get like 30 reps. And it's like, okay, that's what I mean by this was too easy. Because you over doubled the amount of reps you were supposed to do. And if you can get people to think about it that way, I think that's just really helpful. Is that a lot of times the phrasing we use, which I think is useful in the right context in barbell training specifically, is you want to make light weights look like they're heavy. Like you don't
Yeah.
want to get under a squat and kind of like shuffle it around just because it's 135. Like you want to lift, like you want to set up with the intent that that's 500 pounds. I think sometimes that language flips where people go, "Oh, this is heavy. I'm going to move it the same as my max squat." It's like this should be this should move like an empty barbell,
Yeah.
and you should make that weight move like an empty barbell with that same speed as long as you can until there's so much weight on the bar that you literally can't move it that fast anymore. And I think once you do that, just from a mental standpoint, like I think that's what helps you like lock into a session, to, like actually drive the level of stimulus you need to grow.
Yeah, and with that, because you've said there, I love that phrase, move lightweights like the heavyweights, because sometimes I think It's a little bit just using it as an example. So the gym that I'm working here in Thailand is a fitness retreat. So sometimes I'll have clients for a week. I've had a guy for actually like 6 weeks he's been over here for, and one of the guys wanted to basically learn how to use a barbell. Never used a barbell before or anything, and I demoed the exercise. Barbell on your back. This is what we're going to do. We'd progress through kind of like goblet squats, just seeing how his squat pattern was. Cool. We're going to go onto the barbell now. He lifted the barbell up and then put it on his back. And
Hmm.
you from your expression there, you might have seen that, and it's kind of that thing of trying to explain. Look, if we put 50 kilos on there, 100 kilos, whatever it is, you're not going to be able to press it from there. And it's a little bit like the other phrase that I like is how you do one thing is how you do everything. So if you've got that standard, you want to be able to do that, and it practices that setup, and you get more efficient at what you're going to do. And from what you were saying there about going in to that session, how much of that falls onto the coach of kind of um, I don't know the best way to phrase this, of kind of like setting that standard, or I was actually going to say policing that standard, but I don't know if that's the right
Hmm.
phrase. And how much is actually on the client or the athlete to be like, right, this is what my coach has said. I'm going to try and go in from that, or is it kind of like a 50-50 relationship? How do you kind of approach that, and what are your thoughts?
Mm. I think initially it's on the coach to set the standard. I think that's our job as coaches, is that like we set the expectations for what we want each of our clients to do. Now, once we've set that expectation and communicated what that is, then it's on the client to execute. So if I am telling you, hey, this is the expectation that when you walk in the gym, and this I think this language like translate or like transitions from like beginner to intermediate to advanced, where it's like with beginner clients, it's like, hey, I want you to set up for this, because I'm laughing because I'm like, that's every client I've ever given a barbell to. They're like trying to show me how tough they are. And like, oh, I'll just pick this up and throw it on my back. And it's like, please don't do that. Nobody does that. Only people who squat 700 pounds who don't do that. So please don't. Um, so as a beginner, it's like, yes, that's the expectation I want, is that you set up for this like it's your max squat. Then as you transition to an intermediate, it's like, okay, now I want your heavy squat, you to lift that like there's still no weight on the bar, because you've learned these skills, hopefully, as the client has progressed. They've mastered this skill early on, and then we can sort of transition them to a slightly different or more nuanced set of cues and expectations over time. So yeah, I do think it's on the coach to set the standard. Like I think that's a kind of our, I don't know, I could say our only job, but like our primary job as coaches. I do think it's then on the client to begin to be curious about the interpretation of like, hey, we've been doing this for a long time and now you're saying something else. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And that's something else that I've been thinking about more and more recently, is like how curious it the best experience that I think a lot of my clients have had is, or the best experience that certain clients have had, is the clients who are more curious. They ask more questions, and they don't just ask like more questions of like, what is this? Or like, why are we doing this? But like, how does this new cue or this new concept we're working on affect my program in 6 months?
Yeah.
And I think when a client gets a little bit more involved in the process in that way, I think that's where some of these like concepts really start to grow, and like the progress starts to accelerate there. So yeah, I think initially it's on the coach, but I do think the client has a responsibility to, I mean, A, just listen, but also be interested in the sort of like long-term downstream effects of why we've introduced something.
Yeah. And you said there a couple of times of like progress, long term kind of progress and development. And you mentioned earlier about often people's thoughts of doing more is more sets, more reps, more exercises. When you talk about kind of like the curiosity side of things, are you meaning, do you think it makes more sense to be more curious about getting the most out of that one exercise or that 4 or 5 exercises in your program, rather than, do you think maybe people misunderstand curiosity by being like, oh well, let's throw all these other exercises in there and let's try and experiment with them rather than trying to be like, okay, well, what happens if we think about like what you said there about this cue or putting the bar in this and being curious about that one exercise to try and get the most out of it and see how much we can progress with that before we start looking to add other things in. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I would never have come up with that, but I am so glad you said it that way because I think
Right.
that's exactly it. And I think that's another way that if a client is like, or somebody who's listening is like, hey, am I an intermediate client? Am I an advanced client? Am I a beginner client? Because I think most people think they're intermediate to advanced. And really, I think that most people are like beginners to intermediates.
Yeah.
And I think that's an interesting piece is like when you ask questions of your coach, or when you go onto Instagram, you pop a question in a question box. Like, what type of question do you ask? And I think if you're asking the questions of like, hey, how do we add more? How do I do more? That feels a little bit more like a beginner question because there's especially when people are new to a gym, there's this like shiny object syndrome where it's like, oh, new machine, oh, new exercise, oh, new thing over here, oh, the gym just got this, can we use it? And I think that's great, and I think especially for someone who's new who hasn't tried very many things, I think that level of curiosity is amazing. And it's like I want to get more out of whatever is happening in this room, so I think that's great. I think what allows you to transition from beginner to intermediate, from at least like a mental side of how you approach training, is that not like, oh, how do I do more different exercises? But how do I take the things that I do and how do I do them really well? Like, how do I get the most out of this set of lat pull downs this week? Because I was mentoring a new trainer a few months ago, and she was shadowing a session, and we were kind of talking afterwards, and she was getting ready to take on some new clients the following week. And I was like, okay, so like, what are you most nervous about? What questions do you have for me? Like, what is the main thing that's like bubbling up inside? And she's like, what's the thing that I would do that would make all of you roll your eyes at me and be like, oh gosh, this new person here. And I was like, the only thing you could program that I would roll my eyes at is like a Jefferson curl. Otherwise, you're probably fine. Because I was like, there really are, honestly and truly, only a handful of things to do in the gym, right? You're probably going to do some pressing. You're probably going to do like horizontal pressing and vertical pressing, horizontal pulling, vertical pulling, um, squat, hinge. Like, there's really not that much when you really break it down to like its most base level principles. And I was like, listen, I've done lat pull downs. I started training when I was 14. I'm 34. It's 20 years. I've done a lat pull down at least once a week, every week between that day and when did the last time I trained back on Monday? That's like thousands of sets of lat pull downs. And so I'm like, you could literally write that into every client's program. And I'd never be like, oh, all she does is do the same exercises all the time. I'm like, oh, cool. She's really consistent. She's found exercises that work and she's helping her clients execute them well. And I think the magic there from like a coaching standpoint, like we switch this conversation from what do clients think to what do coaches think, is not that like every client has to do a lat pull down the exact same way, but like everyone's going to do a vertical pull. It's hard to get away from. But how do you set that up for each individual client? What kind of grip do you use? How wide do they go? Is it bilateral? Is it unilateral? How much rotation do you want at the torso? Like, where do you want their rib cage? Like, each of those elements, like, that's where I think the curiosity really kicks in. And for somebody who's been training for a long time, it's not like, why are we doing lat pull downs? Because it's like, you have to do a vertical pull. That's why you're doing it. You have to get your arm over your head. I don't know what else to tell you. But like, hey, why did you give me this cue for lats this week? Or like, why did we change to this specific variant? Why did we change my grip width? Why did we change the orientation of my hand and my shoulder? So yeah, I think it's both of those. And I think as the questions begin to get more nuanced, I think that shows growth from a client standpoint of how they're thinking about their own training.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, when you said there about kind of like there's only so many movements that you can go through. The rest is just kind of like the tools that you would use for that movement, and then just swapping it around and adjusting it because yeah, the other thing that you said there about that person being consistent with like the lat pull down, that's how you go into to get better, like what we said right at the start if you're changing the exercises all around, and trying to do some wacky things. Like I think you mentioned about balancing on a Bosu ball and juggling or something like that. It's a little bit like
Hmm.
the other thing is when you said there about asking questions is also what is the goal? What are you doing this for? Because I think, and this might be another tangent, but if you start doing crazy things with exercises, I think sometimes you're actually like devaluing that exercise the more you're trying to add in. Like if you're doing a lat pull down into a monkey bar swing into something else, like it's kind of like, well, what are you actually doing there, rather than what you mentioned about, okay, well, I'm going to use this cue. Does that feel a little bit different? Can we change the tempo, or whatever it may be? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, I've never felt that before, or I've done this, and then it keeps. Because the other thing is to help with that consistency is keeping that client or athlete engaged in it and still feel like they're progressing. Whereas I think sometimes things can be changed too much, and then they're maybe trying more, but the exercise has changed so much that actually the goal of it is pointless. Does that kind of make sense? What's kind of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I immediately thought about like woodworking and power tools because so my wife and I bought a house in 2025 earlier last year. And so I've been slowly building out the garage and I've needed, we've done some home improvement projects and whatnot. And my brother is very, very handy. And so I've been at his house a lot learning how to do stuff and we've been building things together. And one of the things that I just thought about with this is if you were going to get into woodworking, which is something that I've thought about for a long time, I've always liked doing projects with my dad and with my brothers and whatnot throughout my whole life. Um, there are certain tools you're going to use all the time. Like you always need a skill saw, and probably a handsaw is good, hammer, screwdriver, drill, some really basic things. You can get a lot done with the basics. And if you get really good with those basics, like if you handed a craftsman, like an artisan woodworker, like five basic tools, they could churn out some amazing tables. They could they could build you a whole house with like five or six tools. And so I think if clients want to see like large levels of progress, it's like continually pulling them back to the basics of like, hey, we just need to execute these things really well. I need you to go back to a conversation, really try really hard to execute these with high levels of intent to get a lot of stimulus through those muscles. I think what happens is people get excited about woodworking or working out, and they walk into Home Depot and they go, oh, that's a cool tool. That's a cool tool. That's a cool tool. I'm just going to buy all of these. And all of a sudden they have a garage full of things they don't know how to use and they don't really have an application for them. There's a lot of these like really cool like specialty saws. Like this is like a social media rabbit hole I fall down is like how to create these like really beautiful like interlocking joints without any sort of glue or fasteners. And it's like the amount of different specialty tools you need to make them really perfect is insane. And I do not know how people have the like, I mean, my hands shake too much to do that. I don't know how they get any of this done. It's magical. But you could fall into that and be like, well, I'm just going to buy all this stuff. And it's like, cool. Now you have all these things, but you don't actually understand how to use any of them. You don't have the context for them. And so they're not really that useful. Like it's cool that you have like somebody walks through your garage, and go, wow, look at all that. That's so amazing. But it's not actually that useful. And so I think it depends on what you're solving for. And I think, again, as a coach, it's our job to help clients continue to solve for the thing they've asked us to solve for. And I don't think I've ever had a client. I'm going to think about this for a second. I don't think that I've ever had a client sign up with me and have the problem they want solved is novelty.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, I want you to keep me interested. Keep throwing different random things at me. Every client who's ever signed up with me is like, hey, I'm in pain and I'd like to be in less pain. I went through surgery. I've been working with a PT for the past 3 months. They wanted me to find a personal trainer. You've got an injury background. Let's work together to build, to get stronger again so I can go back to doing the activities I did before. Or hey, I'd like to squat double my body weight and I've never held the barbell before. How do we do that? So I think if the goal is to become really good at something specific, you have to do very specific things to get there. And the answer is probably not more novelty. It's a higher level of execution with the not necessarily like the simplest tools, but with the most effective tools.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because, you do, I've had it with coaches that I've worked with, and you see content out there about it of like, the purpose of novelty adding that in. But I do think sometimes, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on it. I think sometimes what you've said there made me think, well, is novelty just something that's created by coaches? Because, especially, online coaching, I know obviously COVID seems a million years ago now, but then all of a sudden everyone became an online coach. The rise of, social media, I think that's kind of like the all-seeing eye of everything. That's what everyone reverts to at the minute, rather than more kind of like, um, longer form content with a little bit more detail, if you like. I mean, don't get me wrong, I share clips on Instagram and all that sort of stuff, but sometimes it's created by that to keep people interested. Whereas exactly like what you said there, I don't know anybody who. I mean, don't get me wrong, sometimes. Um, they'll be like, "Oh, can we just change this round a little bit?" And it might be just off the top of my head doing rather than a dumbbell bicep curl to a cable bicep curl. Let's just change that around a little bit. It could be something still doing the same outcome, just changing the piece of kit. So yeah, sometimes I think what you were saying there, it's maybe novelty is just a fear that is sprouted from us as coaches ourselves to think that we need to keep the client engaged as opposed to, right, my goal is to squat double body weight. All right, cool. This is the plan that we need to do it because that's what we would do ourselves in terms of our own training. So what would be the difference with doing that with clients? That kind of sets up the moving on to kind of the next big topic that I wanted to touch on was you've mentioned a lot there about executing at a certain standard, the coach setting the standard for the client, and that longer term progress. And it's kind of when we're thinking about when those clients come in with those goals, we kind of want to, or a lot of coaches will set their stall out to be like, we're going to guarantee your success because it'd be a little bit like if you're going to a mechanic, can you fix my car? If the mechanic was like, oh, I don't know really, I don't know whether you'd be like, all right, cool, I'm just going to go find another mechanic then because I want my car fixed. How as a coach do you make sure that success is inevitable, that it's gonna happen at the end? Because when you set that plan out and be like, right, this is what we're going to do, I think sometimes that plan has to be stuck to. And then, touch points along the way if anything does need changing or just checking in how progress is, as opposed to kind of like any pushback or anything negative from the client. Okay, cool, let's just change the plan. So how do you make that success inevitable and like a guarantee at the end, if that makes sense?
That is a great question. So, I mean, I don't do any guarantees, obviously, because I think in this line of work, the only guarantee is that the IRS wants money from me every year. Otherwise, there's not much I can do. I think a lot of it comes down to systems. And so the main reasons that I see people not reaching their goals is their plan is bad, the execution of that plan is bad, or the time horizon is too short. So I think a lot of people don't make as much progress as they think they should make, and then they quit early. And one of the things that I've noticed in my own strength training career, we're going to call it a career, is there are gigantic leaps of progress and then nothing for months or years. And then there's this other big like uptick. The last meet I did was in 2023, and the meet I had done before that I think was in 2019 maybe. And I effectively made no progress on my squat between 2019 and 2022 and a half because I mean, COVID came in, switched gyms, opened a business, was just like trying to train, but like, there's a lot going on. And then in the like 8 week meet prep, I added like 80 pounds to my squat. And so it's like, oh my God, you add 80 pounds to your squat in 8 weeks. Work with me. It's like, that's not true. Like the reason I was able to do that is because I spent 3 years really consistently doing a lot of really basic things and just getting stronger overall. And then went into a peak where then all of a sudden the what showed up was this massive strength increase. So I think part of it is just helping clients understand that you might want to hit this big, you might have an event coming up. you might have a meet coming up, or like the Apex competition is very popular in the US right now. I've got a client who did the first one, and he signed up again. And it's like, this is the meet, this is the event. I'm going all in. And it's like, bro, it's not the Olympics. Like, if you don't hit it this time, you can just try again in 3 months. Like, it's okay. Like, you don't have to wait 4 years. Like, your window's not closing. Like, again, I know people, I'm sure you know people like this. They hit PRs into their 40s, into their 50s. Like, you can get really strong and get faster for a long time. Like, sure, it gets harder over time, but you can keep going. Like, there's nothing telling you that you have to stop. Like, oh no, I wasn't as strong as possible by 29. Oh, my life is over. It's like, you can just keep training. You can just keep trying. Like, it'll be fine. And so I think that a lot of times it's a little bit of expectation management, saying like, hey, that's a really aggressive goal. I love it. Might not get there in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Might take longer than that. So that's the first thing, is just kind of like setting the expectation, like, okay, this is what it kind of actually looks like, especially if you're training um, people who have been in the game for a little while. Um, Progress just happens a little more slowly. And then the other thing is the system of follow up and feedback. So one thing that I find really valuable is doing daily feedback sessions with clients, which some coaches are like, I could never do daily check-ins. That's crazy. And I'm like, I don't do daily check-ins either. What happens is a client will send me videos of them working out. And then because I'm on my phone all of the time, I will just open the message they sent me. I will watch the video and I will send them a voice note. The whole thing takes me like a minute, maybe two, if they send me a bunch of videos. And then that client gets feedback daily, sometimes within a couple of hours, sometimes while they're still in the gym. And that allows them to make an application of their progress really quickly. And that's something that my coach, Stu Locke, does really well. So I now work with his company, Kodiak, as a coach as well. And so that's the standard for all the coaches at Kodiak. It's all daily communication. You can do a weekly check-in if you want. You can do a monthly check-in if you want. But videos are always responded to in hours, not days. And so I think that's another thing that makes it really helpful, because a client never feels like they're left out in the rain. Like, they're like, oh, I needed something from you and you weren't there for me. It's like, I got back to you within 3 hours of you being in the gym. How much better can it get without
Yeah.
actually being in the room with you? And then the other thing, kind of going back to your novelty conversation, is understanding like, where are we going and what are the sort of different deviations we can make to get there. So, I don't know if in the UK everything is so close together. I don't know if you guys believe in road trips or not. But in the US, I took a lot of road trips with my family growing up. My wife and I like going on little road trips. I really like flying now. I don't like driving as much, so we do more of those. But there are a lot of little mountain towns out where I live, and so we might be like, oh, we're gonna go stay in a cabin, 2.5 or 3 hours away. And like, what are the things along the way that we want to do? So you can take the direct route. You can hop on the main freeway. It's 10 lanes of traffic the whole way. It's ugly and it sucks. Or you can take this like meandering route through the woods. You have these cool little coffee chalets you can stop to, little hikes you can do, places to grab food. And it's like, you can take kind of whichever route you want. And sometimes that small deviation is actually the piece that will lead you potentially to the goal more quickly, or make that process more enjoyable. And so I think, kind of again, going back to your novelty point, I think there's a difference between like specific novelty and unspecific novelty.
Yeah.
So like, because training has to be interesting. Like, there was a program that I ran, a squat program, where it was the same. Like, I don't know how I did it without going insane. It was 20 weeks in a row of the exact same squat workout. Like, the accessories were the same. It was all the same. Like, the rep ranges and stuff changed, but it was just the same thing. And it was like, I looked up and it was, oh, no, 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 it was 28 weeks. And I looked up and I realized, I was like, wait, how long have I been doing this? I clicked back through my sheets and I was like, I've been doing this forever. That's crazy. I get a lot of clients who are like, hey, I'm really sick of doing Bulgarian split squats. Like, can we please do something else? And it's like, yeah, probably going to do a walking lunge, or a step up, or a reverse lunge, or a front foot elevated split squat, or a split squat ISO, something that still fits within that same category, but feels different enough to keep a client engaged, uh, without completely derailing us. They might be like, oh, I'm tired of doing split squats. It's like, perfect. Let's do calf raises. It's like, those are not analogous in any way, shape, or form. Like, yeah, I guess they're both lower body exercises, but like, that's it. And so I think it's realizing like, hey, what like deviations can I take? Because um, Something else that I've noticed is that when you do the same thing for a long time, you get used to picking up the same weight every time. It's like, oh, with split squats, rear foot elevated, I always grab the 50s. And it's like, cool. You've been doing the 50s for like 6 weeks. You got to be at 70. Like, you got to be way higher than that at this point.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, I can't, they won't just go up because that weight feels too heavy to them when they pick it up. Okay, how do I pick a different exercise where they don't know what weight they're supposed to do? Now they have to find that new weight and then they'll probably go up. And then in 6 or 8 weeks, or 8 or 12 weeks, we'll go back to split squats. And now they're stronger. So now they might grab a heavier weight because they forgot what they have done before. And so yeah, I think that's the other system is understanding like, okay, from the coaching side of things, where is my client going? What path is going to get them there the most quickly from a program standpoint, but what's the other path that's going to keep them the most engaged the whole time? So to go back to our first conversation, they continue to try enough to actually get where they want to get to.
yeah. I think that was kind of coming full circle from what we spoke about at the start. Um, Developing those systems to get that success through that. So I thought that was a really good explanation of it because when you're looking at things, I think trying to show off a little bit sometimes with programming or changing those things is just like yeah, sometimes if you want to change that exercise, like pick like what you said there, rather calf raises. All right, well, what was the point in swapping that out from there? Using something that's still going to have that same outcome, and just excuse me, keeping that momentum going with it and that consistency and applying all those things that we've spoke earlier on in the chat about that trying harder, being curious to get most out of the exercises is going to lead to that success. I completely get what you mean about like guarantees as well, like what you said about the 8 week squat program. This is going to 100% add this to your squat. Well, it's a little bit like, well, no, we still need to put that effort in, put that intent into our training, and build it up, build it up over time. Yes, in that initial 8 weeks, like what you said about, he's going to have that progress, but then it's a case of, in my head, it's always that thing of you want to build the base of the pyramid. The bigger the base of the pyramid, the more that peak's going to be higher. Like what you mentioned about after a couple of years, and then all of a sudden you got you got that PB. It's laying that foundation and building up from there. So quite a lot of topics and tangents thrown in there, Kyle. But I know you did quite a good sum up there. But for everyone listening, whether it's coaches, clients, for everything that we've spoken about there, what would be your take home points or words of wisdom?
Mm. Take home points or words of wisdom. I would say that it's understand the problem you're actually solving for. Once you understand the problem you're actually solving for, the route forward gets a lot clearer.
Yeah, I think that's a, a nice, concise gold nugget of information there. And I think the analogy of I do like road trip. I probably like more road trips now that I'm in Thailand, to be fair, to get in there, getting out and about a little bit. But I think that analogy, I think that hits home with quite a lot of people because at some point in people's lives, people have taken a road trip and gone there. And there's loads of different routes that you can take. Some routes are going to be better than others. Some routes are going to be longer than others. That destination is still there, but it's just a case of what route is it you're going to take, and making sure that you aren't taking too many diversions and not getting there, not getting there. So yeah, I think that was a good piece of information to finish on. And if anyone has any questions about what we've spoken about today, want to reach out to you and ask you those questions or see the content and information you put out there, where could people reach you or find you, Kyle?
So the easiest way is Instagram. So it's underscore Kyle McKee, KyleMcKee. Email is Kyle@KodiakBarbell.com. And happy to answer questions over email. Instagram DMs are open, and I got you covered.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Kyle, for taking the time to jump on. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will catch you all at the next episode.